all of this is based on technology, and where Africa today needs skills is technology skills.
To see things in a way that, in retrospect, or when they're looking back at it, they realize that as a person.
Joining me today, I've got Mr. Kosta Peric, who's part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I just want to speak about some of the amazing work that the Bill and Melinda Foundation is doing, specifically with your department, where it's financial inclusion for the poor. Let's talk a bit about that. What are some of the goals, or what are some of the things you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, what we are trying to achieve is to connect the estimated 1.7 billion people on the planet who are still without bank accounts, of which 400 million adults unbanked are in Africa. So we are working with private sector, public sector entities in Africa and South Asia to connect and serve these people with adequate financial services.
And what are some of the ways that you're actually getting this through? How are you actually doing this?
Yeah, so our main focus, coming from research that we have done, is that what helps most the poor people and households is the ability to transact digitally. And also what helps is if they can do that from a mobile phone, because 95+% of the people we are talking about actually do have access to a mobile phone. Simple mobile phone, not
too technical,
yet,
okay.
but that's totally adequate. And so the basic model that was created in Africa actually is what's called mobile money, which is the capacity to send and receive money as you send and receive text messages.
Okay.
And so the pioneer of that in Africa was, of course, Mpho in Kenya. In Asia, it was bKash in Bangladesh. Today, in sub-Saharan Africa, there are 150 mobile money operations, which are profitable operations for the operators of this, and which are hugely helpful for the people, because what they can do now is, rather than walk with cash to pay bills or to give money to family or friends,
They're now able to transact.
They can do it digitally. Yeah.
How's the foundation doing this on a practical level? Are you guys giving people perhaps the systems? How are you supporting?
So we work exclusively through partners on the ground. So the idea is to help create such a system. And nowadays, because as I said, the goal is not anymore about mobile money itself. We know that works. That's an innovation that's very active. Nowadays, mostly what we work on is to make this interoperable. Because today, mobile money operations kind of are in silos. If you and I want to transact, typically we have to be on the same provider. Now the next wave of innovation is interoperability. And I say now is the age of interoperability in digital financial services, because that's the next step to scale this innovation even further.
I see. Let's talk about some of the capital that you guys offer to support entrepreneurs in this regard. How is that available, and what exactly are you guys looking for in a business that's trying to solve this?
So, first of all, we talk about philanthropic capital. So we are not investors in the sense of venture capital investors. So we don't necessarily
expect returns, or
we don't expect returns. But we also tend not to invest in particular companies. We invest in projects.
Okay.
So to give you an example, on the infrastructure side, on the interoperability side, we tend to work with central banks and banks other private sector entities like telcos who provide mobile money to create a platform, payment platform on a country level or on a regional level that interconnects all of the players together. To do that, the philanthropic capital serves to get this project started and get the project to the point where it's self-sustainable.
Okay.
Yeah?
I must commend the amount of work that you guys are actually doing as a foundation to ensure that people are bankable.
Yeah.
But I must imagine that you must experience a lot of issues in doing that.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest issues that you guys currently encounter?
So the work is, when you solve for one issue, two more come up after. But we are persistent, so it used to be that the main barrier was access to people, because the poor are not necessarily in a big city, they may be rural. So that's where the mobile phone was kind of the tool to remove that barrier. After that, so that gave rise to mobile money. After that, the barrier started to be competitiveness, because these early successes tended to say, well, we do our thing and we don't want to share with anybody else. We have the competitive advantage.
Ah, I see.
And so now we have overcome this. Now all these providers understand that if they interoperate, they actually grow the market. So now the barrier mores tend to be, okay, what's the right regulation so that players can come in that are not necessarily banks, because obviously banks can't reach always to this population, so other players like telcos or non-banks come into the picture. So how do you enable that? And I think this is where we are today. I think the next stage will be where your young entrepreneurs will kick in, which is when this interoperable platform comes in, then we will be looking for the new Ubers, the new applications on top of these platforms that will be used. Let me give you one example that we see in Eastern Africa, the solar pay-as-you-go systems. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were aware.
I heard you speak about it earlier,
Yes.
but I think, yeah.
So it's a system where startups, they sell solar batteries to households, but it's a big expense. So they don't sell it, they lease it. And the household can pay back with small amounts every single day using mobile money. At the end, they actually are the owners of the asset. And so that allows, you see, this whole ecosystem to work for the poor.
Were you guys involved in this specific project?
No, we are
Okay.
not. What's great is that there is so much innovation in Africa. So the question is really to give it a chance to succeed, and where payment platforms really work well is you give a chance to these innovative new applications to come up and be successful, like pay as you go, but of course microloans, transportation services, all sorts of new applications that the people need. All of these 400 million new customers coming, they will need this. And this is where your audience of small entrepreneurs can really shine.
And I think that's a very good point to say, bring in young minds and innovation and paving the way forward.
Yes.
How do young people get involved with the foundation in terms of them actually helping the foundation meet its goal and them coming in? How do they do so practically?
So there are several ways. Obviously, when we talk about infrastructure, this is kind of like long projects involving central banks. So it's not necessarily open to small entrepreneurs to come in with new sorts of applications. They tend to come later when this is built. Yeah. But for example, all of this is based on technology, and where Africa today needs skills is technology skills, payment skills. So one thing we did, just to give you an example of all sorts of things that you need to do to make this successful, we've noticed that some projects of the infrastructure nature got bogged down because there is no off-the-shelf technology to do an interoperable payment platform. You kind of have to pull it together. So what we did is we created a software to do this. We gave the opportunity to some young companies to create this software, and then we've put it in open source. It's called Mojalu, and if your auditors are interested, they can go ahead and look at mojalu.io.
Okay.
It's an open source software. That means that anyone can take
Can plug into it and build something.
Plug into it, build upon it.
Yeah.
That's where I think the opening is.
Wow, that's exceptional.
Yeah.
I think in closing, I just want to know, what are some of the future plans in terms of tackling this big goal that the foundation has taken in terms of including this, I believe you said 1.7, is it 1.17?
1.7 billion
unbanked people around the world.
People around the world.
A very big number.
400 million
are in Africa.
Yeah.
What is the strategy going forward, the ideas going forward that the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation is looking at implementing?
Yeah. So one thing in Africa that makes things perhaps more complex than elsewhere is that Africa is 54 countries. So even if you do this on a country level, it still will take too much time to,
integrating all the different countries. And
so what we do now is look at we do continue to look at a country level, but also we look at a regional level. Now in Africa, there are several economic and monetary unions, like Western African Economic and Monetary Union covering 8 countries in Western Africa. SADC here in
Southern Africa.
In Southern Africa. So now we tend to work more on this regional level, because obviously if you do it once on a regional level, you don't have to do it anymore on the country level.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big innovation. And in Africa, as I said, the Western African, SADC, Eastern African community, the Northern African Arab, so there are natural regions where things are prone to accelerate much faster, this movement. So that's a huge innovation. But I would also say that now we see as these platforms do grow, and I mentioned as well another nice example of this is in Tanzania, where mobile money operators did start to interoperate 5 years ago, and as a result, the huge increase in transaction rates. Now, Tanzania, the Central Bank of Tanzania is driving the deployment of this platform on a country level, and this will be a huge platform for innovation again, for applications to serve as I said, the new Ubers.
Yeah, and businesses to be built on there and grow from there.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for spreading the message.
No, thank you. Thank you. That we heard from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on the amazing work they're doing in banking the unbanked and giving those that don't have an opportunity to be involved financially and digitally.